Oh, the simulator. We love to run it. Vercingetorix is out in the simulator now, and this is Specco simulators. We've talked about this many, many times. I love to use it to get an idea, get a baseline, get a standard. It tells us a little bit about what we're going to see. It is not obviously 100% accurate, but we're going to go through this, and we're going to go through how we did some of these duels with Vercingetorix. And we're going to call him Verci. And we're going to go through how well he did. We're going to give you some of the different pairings we used. And we're going to talk about a murder ball situation and what was the actual best pairing to put Verci with to do more damage as a 5-March lineup. Stick around while we go through all this on our new guy, Verci. Hey everybody, I'm your boy War Daddy Chadsky. I do videos for Rise of Kingdoms all the time, and if you enjoy these videos, throw a like on here. Helps out the channel, helps out the videos, and if you're not subscribed, consider doing so. You can hit that subscribe button, and you can hit that bell if you want to get any alerts when I put out content like this. Well, we have been tooling around a little bit. I say tooling around. We've been going through a little bit of how this thing works out with our boy Vercingetorix, okay? And he's in the game. Not yet, obviously. He's going to be the next MGE commander after we go through our cycles of archers. Here's our boy. We've gone through his support skill or all his different skills when it comes to the kit that he's got. We've done that. We've got a previous video for that. I'll have a card in the end screen that goes through all of his stuff. We talked about the different pairings that we can use with him. Well, we went with our boy Specco. Specco's link to his simulators down in the description. It's a great place to go to test different things for a pre-release commander. And it's a great place to get an idea of how these things work. So that's what we did. Okay, so when we did that, I'm going to pull something up for you here, and it worked out really, really well. First of all, I'm going to go through some of the different duels that we did. Of course, we wanted to try him with Arthur. We wanted to try Verci with Luce. We wanted to try him with maybe BQ, try him with some other partnerships, and we got a lot of information out of that in a duel setting. Now, duel settings, guys, not a huge deal, okay? So just everybody don't freak out when you see these results. Just take a deep breath, but it gives us a little bit of information about how the guy might translate into the game. And then I went through and did a murder ball setting of damage taken and damage given, okay? And so from there, let's go through real quick what we saw. The first thing we saw is this normal damage calculator, okay? In any kind of situation to where Verci is firing off shields, all right, he's got that skill to where he's going to enhance more normal damage, and this is what I saw on the Arthur March. He was continuously running the normal damage up to over 40%. Obviously, his 4 skill allows you to stack 4 stacks of 10% normal damage, and it's actually got a pretty high uptime based on how the simulator works. Now, Specco, and I even talked to him, the simulator is really pretty simple for Verci. Okay, he's got simple stacks. He's got simple things that go on with the simulator, so pretty easy to see. In addition to that, the proc rate on Verci is out of control. It was a 6.3. That's about average of what we saw, and that means that his active skill is firing off so fast. He is a rage monster, guys. He's a rage monster, okay? With his 3rd skill or 2nd skill and his 4th skill, he does different ways to gain rage and mitigate rage. He does all kinds of weird stuff when it comes to that. But that's one thing that we saw is that he fires up the rage so fast, okay? So when we did that, the first thing that we saw, I ran him against an Alp Shajar, okay? He wins the trade but loses the battle because of the healing. But that is a pretty good precursor to what we're going to see with Arthur and Verci, okay? And it gives us a pretty good barometer. Alp Shajar is a really good dueling march, right? It's got a ton of healing. It's got single target damage. That's what it's kind of designed to do, and this thing kind of holds its own. So that's something to consider when we go through this. Now I'm going to have other reports with Phillip behind Arthur to give us a barometer, and we're also going to have some reports maybe with Echelon. So you'll have to wait till the end for that because That really surprised me. All right. Now, you got to remember, on these simulator battles, okay, I'm running it up. It's full crit gear, full crit, everything that we've got. It's got iconic gears. I put up the VIP 19 stuff. I've done SOC stuff. I have set it up, and you'll see when it comes to the murder ball stuff that we do, I'll go through all of those stats and how we did it. Now here it is again against YSG behind Alp Arslan, does exceptionally well. Okay, Arthur Verci did really, really well when it came to that. We ran it against the single target monster of Huo and Nevsky, actually beats it. Now, that was something that was pretty eye-opening. The fact that Arthur and Verci could actually go beat a Huo Nevsky. Now, that's loaded up with Wedge 2.0 inscriptions on the Huo and Nevsky. So that's something to consider there. Okay, so we're seeing it's kind of holding its own on the duels. Then you come in here, it shows it again. It beats Huo Nevsky again. Okay, then I ran it against Gang Gang and Achilles. Now, Gang Gang and Achilles wrecked it pretty good, but look how much healing Gang Gang is doing. 47,000 healing. So we know Gang Gang and Achilles is going to do really well in certain duels because it's going to heal so much, and that's one thing that it does really well. Okay, you come into the next one and it's still getting wrecked pretty good by the Gang Gang and Achilles. All right, I did run it a third time and you're getting about the same result. Okay, now granted, you guys got to keep in mind all of this is Delta formation stuff, okay, and it's loaded up with Delta formation. All right, we'll get into the echelon, we'll get into the pincer stuff later. Okay, then I ran it against an Arthur with Phillip. Okay, this is what it does to the Arthur Phillip. Like, it wrecks it. Of course, Arthur Phillip is not a dueling march. We know that. We know that. It is straight damage from Arthur, buffing and debuffing from Phillip. Okay, I ran it against Gang Gang and Achilles again. This is when I put him behind Luce, and we ran that a little bit. And against Gang Gang and Achilles, of course, you guys got to remember Achilles Paleon Spear, when you actually do smite damage, does not register. Okay, you don't mitigate that damage of smite. It's against skill damage, combo damage, that and counterattack damage. That's how you do it for Achilles. So the Luce with Verci actually does much better against that Gang Gang and Achilles. All right. Then I ran it with against Arthur and Achilles, and it beats Arthur and Achilles. It's the same type of deal. Luce with Verci doing really, really good against Arthur Achilles. Again, the Paleon Spear, the extra proc of that, not going to fire off with Achilles when he's taking a bunch of smite damage, okay? So we know that going in, so nobody freak out about that, all right? Then I ran it again, and it actually won, but not by as much. And so trading about even, though the point is here, guys, is that we're putting Verci with Arthur and Luce. Okay, these are AoE commanders. They're not made for dueling. And the fact that it's holding its own against some of the meta pairings right now is just pretty insane. It's pretty crazy. I did go back to Arthur, and I ran it against Arthur Achilles. It beats Arthur Achilles when it comes to this March in a dueling setup. Okay, I ran it against Sun Tzu and BQ, and this is where it starts getting just mollywopped. Okay, Sun Tzu crushing cavalry, especially in dueling settings when it comes to this. Okay, so it's going to get absolutely pelted with infantry. Okay, Sun Tzu and Wallace even worse. Holy gee, Sun Tzu Wallace, like dueling monster. Another one here that was really, really bad. Okay, and so then I ran it against Hector. So I wish I could have these things kind of mixed up just a little bit, but you saw where Arthur and Verci against the Phillip just crushed it. And then I ran against the Hector, and the Arthur Hector wins. It wins. This is a march we've been running, guys, and it's fantastic. It's like it has been the best in slot for your murder ball, but a whole lot of people don't have Hector. He's more ideal for Garrison. He's the meta 1v1 versus rally Garrison for archers. He's meta on the Cav side, especially the 1v1 situation behind David. Okay, on the infantry side, he performs just as well as Tokugawa in a single troop type situation for the infantry garrison, and he gives you the mixed element for all three of those. So a whole lot of players don't have him. Most garrisons do, and when you run them with Arthur. Okay, and you can see right here, as you can see, Arthur and Verci really holding their own in a lot of different settings. In the dueling, you can see where Arthur Hector gets it, right? Which makes sense. You know, Hector's going to do a lot of damage in a 1v1 setting. All right, we'll go to the murder ball setting pretty soon. Here's another one where the Arthur and Verci actually beat the Arthur Hector. Okay, so this is much more close than we saw the Arthur Verci versus Arthur Phillip. Okay, and so we know that Arthur Phillip is more of a murder ball type march. It's not a dueling march, and that's fine. Okay, we come down here when we run it again. We ran it 3 times. It did pretty well. I'd say it's probably about even when it comes to that. Then we put Verci behind BQ. And it gets absolutely pummeled by archers. Okay, just wrecked. All right, we went and ran it again. It was even worse. Holy jeez. This is with Luce and Verci. BQ and Verci just got cooked. Now, I did notice that the BQ with Verci did pretty well compared to the Luce, okay, as it's getting wrecked by archers over here. Against the other Smite, it gets absolutely torched. Sun Tzu just dominating everything. Okay, ran it again against the Sun Tzu with BQ, just gets torched. Okay, and then now even with the Huo Nevsky, the Luce Verci gets wrecked pretty good. Okay, so the Luce does not seem to be like the best pairing. Now, I did notice that the normal damage ramped up pretty good, not as high as Arthur, but that particular synergy with Luce might not be what we thought, but it might have done better in a murder ball setting. However, you see that things kind of change a little bit. That's how much RNG you have, to where you get a trade like this and then a trade like this, okay? But it just at least gives you an idea on the dual settings, all right? Now, it ran against Gang Gang and Achilles and actually got beat, but was pretty close. We ran it again. It actually won this time. So Luce and Verci got a little bit. But now here's where everybody has to understand something. There is a theory, okay? And I really like the theory because, as everybody knows, I've got a whole bunch of leadership gear over here. And in addition to that, I've got a crazy busted good echelon set. All right, so I would love nothing more to be able to run Phillip with Verci, okay? I would love nothing more to be able to do that. However, in any kind of dueling situation, guys, it's gonna get its face kicked in, okay? This is not what you want. Phillip and Verci with full echelon and full leadership set critted out, this is not what you want, okay? And so from there, it gives you an idea. It's even got more troops from the Phillip skills. And the Verci skills. And so from there, you come over here, you run BQ with Verci against Arthur and Achilles. The BQ Verci actually does really good against Arthur and Achilles. All right, it actually does really good against Gang Gang and Achilles. So a little bit different from the Luce. All right, and don't worry, we'll talk about all this at the end and go through it. Gang Gang and Achilles gets wrecked by BQ and Verci. All right, Sun Tzu and Sun Tzu and BQ just crush everything. Sun Tzu is like the master dueler. It's crazy. It's crazy. Just beating up the BQ Verci. So we tried it in a bunch of different ways. Of course, Alp Arslan with YSG. And then we actually ran Chen with Verci. And hey, yo, is there some application with Chen? I don't really like it because Verci's skills are a little bit different. Let me hear it. Let me pull this up here and kind of go through it with you in just a second. We'll look at his skills in just a few. But then we ran the Phillip Verci again. Look at this thing, guys. Phillip and Verci, do not run this, guys. Oh my gosh. We know that's going to be a buffing march, but you don't want to look at these reports. It just doesn't do any damage. That's the concern that we have with Phillip and Vercingetorix, okay? That's the biggest concern that we have, all right? I ran it again against the Sun Tzu and Luce. I mean, it's just getting pummeled all the way around, okay? So that's kind of the takeaway from the echelon. Great theory, but just not going to work. That's not going to work. You gotta, because Vercingetorix, and let's go through his kit just real quick here, okay? We'll kind of pull this up. We'll go through it and figure this thing out. And so when you come to this and you're trying to figure out exactly what Vercingetorix does, okay, the reason why some of his stuff works the way it does is because, number one, he's going to be a shielding commander. So you're naturally going to want synergies with commanders that are more glass cannon, right? He's got good stat sticks that are tanking. When you're mitigating rage, okay, he can stack up some of these direct damage, combo damage, and smite damage bonuses. All right, which is good. That's being an enhancer for the commander he's paired with. If he's paired with Phillip, that doesn't mean anything. Like, the second skill doesn't mean anything on the bottom half when it talks about mitigating rage, all right, and getting stacks of buffs to skill damage, combo damage, and smite damage. All right, then you come to his third skill. You got a unit cap, of course, and then you've got the damage that you do and damage that you mitigate when you have one troop type or two troop types, just depending on how you do it. And then the fourth skill, this is really important because you want to ratchet up the normal damage when it comes to these shields. And that's what we saw. That's why I showed you that the normal damage percentage was well over 40% when I was running him with Arthur. And it stayed there for quite a long time in a dueling setting. Okay, and so when you do that, you're enhancing. The normal damage enhancement of 40+% just does nothing but help Arthur, help BQ, help Luce, help any smite or combo commander. And that's what that thing does, okay? And then his expertise, guys. All right? When his expertise, before you use an active skill as the primary commander, if you have Verci as a secondary, you get a 40% bonus to damage, all right? With Phillip, none of this works. And honestly, we saw a good report from Chen. It really doesn't work with Chen either, because you get that for that 1 second. You get it for the primary commander's active skill if Verci is secondary. So not great for Chen because he's not doing big damage in one turn. Chen's just doing a bunch of damage every turn. It's kind of like Attila, right? Just in a different way. And then the same thing with Phillip. You're not enhancing anything. So that theory that Verci and Phillip, or Phillip and Verci, however you want to do a leadership march, that's got to go away. You're going to get nothing but pummeled trades at that point, okay? So from there, we wanted to know, how did this thing do in a murder ball setting? Well, the way you do it in a simulator on the murder ball setting is really pretty simple, okay? I'm going to pull down my Chadski here so you guys can see. Where's my, let's see, we'll pull this down. We'll take this and pull this back here, okay? So the murder ball setting is set up to where you got to have like a punching bag, right? And when you have a punching bag, you're able to hit that. Okay, now I got this thing pulled up, and this is what we ran. Excuse me. As you can see, we go through this thing and it works out pretty well. Now, some of the things you guys got to think about is how we set up these marches. Now, I'm going to show you here in just a second of exactly how we did that, but I want you guys to see how this thing might work, okay? And so let me see here. We're going to put this all the way up here to the top, and it'll work out pretty good, okay? So this is what we saw when we set this thing up. You can see at the top, all right, because you can adjust anything that you want in these settings, okay? You can see at the top that we have put this thing together to where we are doing Arabia, okay? We're hitting a punching bag. That's what that is. We're going to use a 10% defense token. That's pretty average. All right, we're going to have an attack of 10%, defense 10%, health of 10%. That's basically between all your armaments, all of your city skins. We're just giving you a baseline. We just want to keep that the same, all right? We got VIP 19, 430,000 troops, and then on your crystal tech, because we're using SOC, 12.5% attack, 15% defense, 15% health. I did not do the damage reduction. You don't really need it for this. Plus, most players don't get the full damage reduction. So this is how I set it up. I set it up with 5 marches. Gang and Achilles. I set it up with BQ and Luce, Sun Tzu and Wallace, Chen and Zuge, and then Arthur and Verci, okay? Then I'm going to put in Phillip. Then I'm going to put in Hector with Arthur. Then I'm going to change Verci over to the infantry, and I want to see the difference. And I ran these things quite a bit, and this is what it showed you, okay? I've got to come back here. Hold on 1 second. Let me pull this thing back. As we go through this, you gotta set this thing up in OBS, and it works out really well. Okay, so here's what we saw. The first testing that we did with Arthur and Verci, okay, with damage taken by the punching bag of 30,677,000. Okay, all right, that gives us an idea. We went and ran it again, And it did with Phillip, it did 31,685. Okay, so now you got Arthur and Phillip that actually did more damage. All right, and this is kind of on an average. I took a whole bunch of these, but then kind of took the average. The Arthur Phillip actually did more damage collectively as a group, which might make sense. Considering that Phillip is buffing everybody. Okay, now Verci does do the attack buff for a lot of marches, but Phillip does the all damage, his big buffs. Okay, I ran it again, 31,348,000. But this is like nothing to write home about. This is like not that game changing. It's just a little bit more, 3 or 4% more that you do on the damage. Okay, and so from there, you can also notice that Verci, with some of the shielding he's doing, is taking less damage. You can see over on the right that the punching badge, when it says damage done, that's coming from the actual punching bag, okay? And you can see against Phillip, he's taking much more damage than Verci. And that's got to do a lot of those shields that Verci puts out. And so Verci in your murder ball lineup, arguably you could say, is probably a little bit more tanky overall for your murder ball lineup. But guys, we're like splitting hairs here. We're not talking about much mitigation going on there, okay? Then I ran it with Hector, and oh boy, here we go. Now, Arthur Hector ran up 32,272,000. So overall in a murder ball setting, Hector's doing more damage, okay? He's obviously going to do more damage with Arthur. And Hector's also going to, as a whole, that march collectively with the other 4 marches is going to do more damage. I ran it again, same type of deal, 32,589,000. Okay. Now, the one thing that's kind of hard about this is that on an Arthur Hector march, Arthur gets targeted a lot. In the Verci situation with more shielding and more tankiness might be a really good idea for Arthur, but that's kind of what we saw. All right, then we hit this thing up again and we put Vercingetorix over on the BQ side. Okay, and you can see it doesn't quite do as much damage, all right, as just without Verci at all. Okay, then I ran him again, 30,816,000. Okay, and that's with Verci behind BQ. Then I put Sun Tzu with BQ and Verci behind Luce. 30,978,000. I ran it again, 31 million behind the Luce. Okay, and that's what we saw in this. So the takeaway from this and what we just see in the simulator. Now, guys, we're going to test everything in the game and we're going to figure this thing out. All right. But what we see in the simulator is that with Verci behind Arthur, okay, you're doing overall damage less than Phillip in your murder ball. All right. And that's on 2 different samples of Phillip. And then when you run Hector behind Arthur and you don't have Verci in your lineup at all, you're doing even more damage. All right. So though I think it is a good pair with Arthur, like a really good pair, and I think that it's a really good pair with Luce, and honestly, surprisingly, a really good pair with BQ. All right. Everybody relax. Verci's not that game-changing in meta, okay? He's going to help a lot of Cav players who are running 4 marches, or I'm sorry, running 2 marches of Cavs, or sometimes 3 marches of Cavs, because he's an ideal fit for running him with Arthur, okay? But I can't see anything meta changing in here. Basically, if you already have Phillip, keep running Phillip. Use him as your stopgap. Use him as your makeshift commander while you move around. If you have Hector and you're a garrison commander, use Hector. You're going to be completely fine. All right. And based on this, if you're looking at Verci, the only way that you really look at that as any kind of must-max situation or, hey, we need to go in here and get this guy, is if you are running multiple infantry marches, running multiple cavalry marches, and you got to have Verci to run the makeshift stuff to put him behind Arthur. All right. Or to go to put him behind Luce. You got to figure out ways to go do that if you're running a whole bunch of cavalry or infantry marches. Okay. And so from there, that is not, I think it's really good. And it was a really good exercise to see some of these different things on how this thing worked. Oop, let me pull this up, because Verci was just not that game-changing in a murder ball setting. And it's kind of weird. He does dueling probably as well as Hector, but he also does some of those buffing situations where he's got his 30% attack going to multiple marches. However, when you compare him overall to Phillip, guys, I mean, Phillip is really, really good in a murder ball. I don't know what else to tell you. And then the other takeaway from this is the fact that any sort of Phillip with Verci echelon situation, no go, daddy-o. Do not run that. That March is going to get cooked. It's going to get absolutely wrecked. All right? Absolutely wrecked. It's not tanky. It just doesn't do any damage. You're just not going to get good reports from that. And so I also tried out a little bit of theory crafting with Attila, the same type of deal with Attila. Okay? Excuse me. With Attila, he doesn't do any big damage. And as we all know, Verci's big skill that he likes to do is doing damage for the active skill of the primary commander. And so that's not what Attila does. And it's the same thing with Chen, even though Chen is always going to carry. He's always going to carry when it comes to this. But when you come to this, Verci and his expertise, this is why you put him with a big damage dealer. You want to enhance the primary that you're with. So that gives you guys an idea of some of these testings that we did. I'll have Specco Simulator linked down in the description. You can go support that dude, get the simulator, kind of mess around with it a little bit, and do it for duel settings, do it for punching bag settings in a murder ball. What's going to put out the most damage? What's going to routinely do that? It's a really cool tool that you can use, and it gives us an idea. Like I said, it's not perfect. The simulator and Arc have always been an awful place for Attila to do anything for whatever reason. He just doesn't do well in those simulators, but then he crushes it in KVK. So from there, you got to take it with a grain of salt. However, it gives us a good barometer, it gives us a good idea. Appreciate Specco for putting that thing together. And with that, throw a like up here if you guys enjoyed, if you got some entertainment out of it. And we will see you later, broskies.